I forgot how to share my slides. Yes.
So I think on the top left be something. Import it first, right? And now, and now we go back.
For those of you online, we're just waiting for the slides to get set up and in the room. Okay, we got the slides up.
See them?
Yes.
So I guess it's time to start. Welcome everybody to this hybrid meeting of the Manet working group. Also on behalf of my co-chair Don Vellik, who is remote, whereas I'm on site. And our area director Alvaro Matana is in the room, also on site.
You're still a little faint. If you can get maybe closer to the mic.
Not without swallowing it, actually. So this is the note well, and this session is being recorded. Take note of the note well. Everything that you say in here is an IETF contribution, and there are some other important points as well. I see a message in the chat to turn up the mic gain. I have no control over that. I have a microphone right in front of me, and I cannot get...
Can you try maybe the other mic that's up near the front? Can you take that off the podium and just use that?
Try that, yeah, maybe. Is this better?
Yes.
Okay then. we're using this one. Um, Here are some hints, tips for both in-person and remote participants. This is only the second slot of the day, so maybe you're not quite familiar with this. In-person, people in the room here can make use of this special on-site tool, which runs on mobile devices, and they can use this to scan a QR code and thereby sign the blue sheets. If you go up to the mic to say something, please do not remove your mask. You have to wear your mask at all times, and even I as a chair have to wear the mask. Here are some resources. Here is who we are, Don and myself, and our responsible AD, and the mailing list. Here's the agenda for this afternoon. We have a fairly short agenda. We may have me go through it before the hour is over. However, I really would like to achieve two things in this meeting. And that's sort of a decision to be confirmed on the mailing list, of course, about how to proceed with the credit-based flow control documents that have been under transport area early review. And specifically, there has been a suggestion to merge two of these documents. And I would really like to hear the opinion of the working group and also the author, Lou Berger, and his co-authors defer to the working group on this. So we have to form an opinion on this and then take it from there. Another thing is that we have a working group adoption call running for one of the PHY-related drafts by Henning Rogge, the one on radio band parameters. This means frequency and bandwidth. Some discussion has been started on the mailing list, and that's good. We started the adoption call, and I'd really like to hear some more opinions. Then we come to future work, but that's not very much different from what was on the slide last time. And then, if time allows, I have a little bit of a different thing. Nothing to do with DLab, but something that I've been working on myself. And it allows simplified multicast forwarding, RFC 6621, to make use of NPR information from OLS-RV2 in a thing called source-based NPR. And let's see if we can get to that. Document status. As said, 3 credit-based flow control drafts have been under TSV area review team review. We got some feedback the end of November last year. I apologize for not responding to that earlier. Lou Berger, on behalf of the authors, has also responded fairly recently. He has taken a lot of comments from David Black, the reviewer, on board, and this has resulted in the issuing of new versions of these documents. However, one main point, and we're coming to that on the next agenda item, is this discussion on to merge or not to merge. We had one other document in the same series. This was on ether-based credit flow control, or I should say 802.1.q, where credit-based flow control. That was not part of the package that we sent to TSV, to the area review team, because it was a little bit behind. At the time it was still in the working group. It now has passed working group last call, and we have to decide what to do with it. But it is contingent on the discussion that we're having on the merging or not merging of the other drafts. Then we have the running adoption call for the DLab radio band extension. There are two more proposed extensions by the same author, and we should revive the discussion on that on the mailing list. We're coming to the second point of the agenda now, which is the discussion on the credit-based flow control draft documents. As I said, these have been in a review. Good comments from the reviewer. Lots of those comments taken on board. However, David Black strongly suggests that the diff server aware credit extension and the traffic classification drafts are merged, because the DA credit extension is a very short draft. This has been noticed by other people before, like Henning Rogge. And he thinks it would help implementers, it would make things more clear for implementers if this was to become one document. And as said, the authors think that the working group should decide, because it was the working group that decided to split these documents in the first place. And so it seems appropriate that the working group has a say in how to go forward with this. That's the discussion that I want to have after Lou has presented a bit of the history behind all of this, because this is a very long-running thing that started before my co-chair and I were chairs of this working group. And we have to bring this to some conclusion and not go flip-flopping between splitting and merging forever. I do want to add that if we decide to follow the suggestion by David Black, that there will be an impact on that one draft that's still limping behind, the ether credit-based flow control, because that's dependent on the traffic classification draft in the same way that the diff aware document is. So if we merge diff aware with traffic classification, and we also merge ether based with traffic classification, we get two documents with roughly 60-70% the same content. And that's strange, I think. So then we would have to look at the traffic classification, how we could possibly rework that and maybe divide that up into two separate documents and then merge one with diff serverware and the other one with the ether-based. But that's painful surgery, I would say. So now I would like to give Lou Berger the chance to refresh some of the ideas behind all this. Is that okay, Lou?
Sure, happy to.
Go ahead, and I will, well...
Next slide. I think you covered a lot of what I was going to say.
Okay,
you know,
sorry
basically, no. I'm actually happier that you did it because, as you said, it's a working group decision. It's not an author decision. So we have these old, very old documents. The fourth one had trailed behind. I think at this point, effectively, it is caught up. The working group had made the call to break them apart, largely because then you, from a conformance standpoint, you would say, you know, as a user, you could say, or as a vendor, you could say, we conform with this RFC, and it's unambiguous which parts that you support. There was some concern that if they were a single document, it would imply that you supported everything. And that was the, you know, from my view, that was the rationale behind the split up. And I'm really talking to the next slide, but anyway, doesn't matter. No, it's okay. Go back. So that's, you know, that's really going back ancient history, and these are really old documents that have really been slowed down based on, you know, what's gone on in the working group. It doesn't seem like there's much technical open issues on this. The documents have been stable a very long time. David did ask for a clarification that ended up in one technical change that's highlighted in green below. I think the really only open substantive question is how many documents. From my view, you know, we had that history of splitting things apart, and that's if you want to go into more of that, there's a couple more slides on it. You know, that those changes date back literally 10 IETFs, maybe 12 IETFs ago. So that was a long ancient history. So it doesn't matter what the ancient history is. The key things I think are we are where we are. Number one. Number two, there was a rationale for the split, meaning referencing documents with unambiguous conformance. And you know, to me, that seemed reasonable at the time. I wasn't adamant then either, as I am not now. You know, I think it could go either way. I would say if that we're going to merge, I think we should merge all four and put it in a single document. And I think also keeping them apart has some good rationale to it. I'll flip through the next two slides just because they're really old and they had been presented and may provide some additional context, and then leave it to the room to discuss. Next, please.
Yeah, I don't think there are any more slides because the ones that you sent me...
Yeah, that's it.
That's the one. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, so back in... basically, the first split happened based on discussions at IETF 101, then they were presented at 102, and this talks about how the documents were moved apart, and it's still referencing basically the same set of documents and the same technologies. There has been some cleanup since then, but nothing too substantive. Next. And then at 102, there was some additional discussion about that yielded the structure we have now. And it was to make it clear, again, from the conformance standpoint, what you were supporting. From a implementer standpoint, I don't know, I don't care if it's one document or 10 documents, as long as they're linked to each other and these have appropriate normative references. That's the background. If there's any questions, I can flip back and forth between the slides. I really don't think there's much left to say on the topic. I think the next slide just says, what do we want to do? And
Yeah, that's the one I removed because it only said next steps sent to the IESG question mark. And
Well,
think,
that's from my end. We need a decision. These things have been open in last call for like 3 years.
yes,
And yes, 3 years and a lot of shares. And, it's time to be done with these. Frankly, I have resisted doing any new work in this working group because of how long it's taken to get these documents out.
yeah,
And there were a number of related documents that I was planning on working on, and I just haven't because what's the point? So I'd like to see these go forward, and then we can revisit new work.
yeah. I was going quickly through the list of attendants to see if Rick Taylor was there, but that doesn't seem to be the case because I think he was one of the driving forces, so to speak, behind the split. But as far as I can see, he's not there now. But we can always ask later. So is there anyone else who has an opinion or a comment or
Maybe RAD can talk about whether he has an opinion.
if he wants
Not to
to?
put Alvaro on the spot, but I see him in the room, so why not?
Hi, Alvaro Rutana. I don't care. Well, I do care. Let me put it another way. It doesn't matter to me whether you progress 1 or 4. The only thing that will matter when I get to process them is, as you said, Lou, they're properly referenced back and forth. Given this discussion, I'll probably, if there are more than one, progress them together, right? So we're not trying to review things in the ASG that depend on something that happened a few months ago or something like that. So from that point of view, right, it will end up hopefully being that we publish them all at the same time. So from the point of view of our C publication, it's about the same thing, right? I have heard in other working groups, similar arguments of being able to say, as an implementation, I support RFC1 or RFC2 or just 3 but not 2 or whatever it is, so that it makes it easier for people to put that in their literature or whatever, manuals or anything. And so other working groups have taken that path. The same thing in those cases. I'd rather, if there's related things, to kind of process them together. But so this is not unusual that things are progressed independent of each other. Independent meaning different RFCs or different drafts that are just related at some point. So that's why I started by saying that to me, as the AD and having to process this, it doesn't really make a difference which way you want to do it, if in one package or in this case 4 different drafts. I won't even say that I hope that helped because it probably didn't, but it's up to you guys.
Yes. And we had the same discussion 1 year ago when we had these 3 fire-related drafts from Henning Rogge. And we also said, well, they're fairly short. Should we merge them or should we keep them separate? And it was exactly the same argumentation that if you keep them separate, then implementers can say, well, I support this one but not the other one. So that is valid. My only concern is that if we ignore a strong suggestion from a TSV area review team, and it has to go back there at some point, or that we will be effectively blocked.
If I can say something real quick. For some reason I can't get off the queue, but since I'm there anyways. I was going to say that this is a strong suggestion by the TSV reviewer. It is not a blocking position.
No.
Right?
Yet.
So, we can forward it. It's up to maybe the transport ADs to decide whether they block it or not. I can't speak for them, but I would doubt that if we progress all documents at the same time and we explain why we're doing this, that, they would want to block anything. Because, by that point, by the time we get to the IESG and it's time for them to put their ballots in, if they're going to block on that, now we have to go back, right? Merge everything, go through IETF last call, everything else, and it's just going to delay something for the same text, right? And maybe confusion to implementers or people in the field. So, sure, it's nice to listen to the reviewers, but this doesn't sound like a technical argument, right? That he's saying that something is wrong.
Yeah.
It sounds like, we could do this in one document, which we could. But again, it's up to what you guys who know the market and the implementations think is better for this work. And I agree with Lou, right? Whatever we decide, we should just move this along and get it over with.
Get going, yes. Lou, you want to say something?
Yeah, I mean, based on all the discussion, I would prefer to keep them separate. And not only because it's less work for me, which is always a nice thing, but we can take the versions we have right now and submit them. All the other comments have been addressed, and the documents have been updated, at the same level. I think they're ready to hit submit at this point. It would be good to get David to confirm that his other comments are addressed, and then go.
Are we waiting on further feedback from David?
I think it's always good form to circle back to a reviewer and confirm with them that their comments are addressed.
Okay.
I would say send them a message and say, hey, can you confirm? And if, give them a month, give them some reasonable period of time to respond.
Yeah, he's been waiting for us, for me, maybe, for a very long time. So
yeah, but we shouldn't wait a very long time.
Forgotten about this. But
we shouldn't wait a very long time. And keep in mind that this is just getting into the IESG. There's still IETF last call. There's still the formal approvals by the area directors. He'll have plenty of time to speak up if he disagrees.
Yeah.
Or plenty of opportunity, I shouldn't say time. Unfortunately, it will be plenty of time, but I meant plenty of opportunity.
So my takeaway for now is that we keep those documents separate, and I will send a mail to the mailing list to ask there that this is our intended decision, and give people a week or two, maybe a week.
Why do we even need to ask? I mean, the working group previously has, for years have said, keep it this way. Why do we need to go back to the working group and say, yeah, we're really going to keep it this way? We've already said the working group's already said that.
Sorry, it was you that said that we should defer to the working group. So.
That's not the same as asking the question again. I don't think we need to ask the question again. I think, asking David if he has any comments, I think that, does the current versions address all his comments? I think that's good. Alvaro said progress them as a set. I think that's good. But, we don't have to have, unless someone else raises this, we've asked and answered this so many times in the working group. I'm not sure it helps to ask again. But I guess I'll defer to the chair. I'll defer to the chair. So however you want to run it.
Yeah. Okay. A post to the list won't hurt, and if there's no response, then we progress as we just agreed. And I'll get back to David Black to see if he's happy with the way you resolved all his other comments. Does that sound like a way forward? Silence is...
Sounds good to me.
Yeah.
Let's move forward. Sorry, I didn't realize you were looking for explicit development. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks, Lou. Moving on to agenda item number 3. The 3 fire-related drafts from Henning Rogge are also a year old now. There has been some discussion on the mailing list, but not much. So we're really keeping another author waiting. This should not become a tradition. But I blame myself. Let me say that. It seemed to me that there was a discussion on the channel busy stuff a bit more than on the other ones, because there the draft proposed to send a lot of parameters to the router by the modem and let the router sort out what to do with those through some magic formula. But this radio band thing seemed to be the least contentious, at least for my personal observation. So I thought that we could put this one in working group or in working group adoption call, even if it's not perfect in its current form. And I recently raised a question about what to do if your radio or the modem that's attached to if the modem is attached to a radio that's of the frequency hopping kind, how you can then meaningfully have a single value for the frequency in the data item. And Henning has responded. There's been a reaction from former chair Justin Dean. I've responded this morning, so the discussion is going, which is good, but that should not stop this draft from being adopted as a working group document, as far as I'm concerned, because that's not the end of a process and not the end of a discussion, but really the beginning of it. It's not in working group last call. Don, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, I just had a question of why it was just this draft. Like Henning has 3 drafts, and it seems to me that the frequency one is probably related to the quality that in quality aspects. The discussion, as I've been reading it, seems to be that if you're doing frequency hopping, it might have some other effect on it, but you're really not going to get a good feel for what the actual capability of frequency hopping is, other than it can do it. So I thought maybe addressing all 3 might make sense, and I just wondered why we were just doing the one.
Fair point. My idea was, what I proposed was to, for the frequency hopping, just have a flag in the data item that said whether the frequency hopping field had a meaningful value. So if the frequency field had a meaningful value, so if the radio was of the frequency hopping kind, then you would just lower this flag and say, okay, it can still report the bandwidth, but I don't have a sensible value for the frequency hopping, so just ignore that.
Is the bandwidth that's reported, is that a data bandwidth, or is that a frequency bandwidth?
That's a bandwidth in hertz. So how much of the spectrum is this signal occupying, so that the router can decide to use a less bandwidth consuming alternative, if there is one.
Yeah, I just thought the use of bandwidth. Sorry, go ahead.
No, that's the way that this router would factor this information into its routing decision. That was the idea, as far as I understood.
Yeah, when I saw that in the draft, I'm used to bandwidth being a data bandwidth of bits per second, and we might want to use a different term or make sure that we point that out. That
Well, I think the thing in hertz is the original meaning of bandwidth, and
yeah, us data guys, we wrecked it, huh?
exactly. I call that capacity, by the way. So yeah, we have this adoption call running until Friday, but you do have a point. Why not the other two? So maybe I'll just issue adoption calls for those as well, if only to get some more discussion. That would be good. So far, however, I think the discussion on the radio band thing is not overwhelming. So this is another encouragement to the working group members to state their opinions or ask questions or provide comments, as some have been doing, but I hope there are more people out there that can chime in on this. Okay, the future work slide did not really change since last time. We had a presentation last time by Ed Berain from the chair of the DTN working group on what is now called DTN network management, but what used to be called asynchronous management architecture. There were a few questions at the end of the presentation, but not a whole lot. I'm planning to attend the DTN meeting tomorrow and see where they are with that, and maybe have a chat with people to the extent that they are present here afterwards. As far as multicast is concerned, we still have this question of whether it's worth pursuing. I think it is, but in a slightly different context, namely as part of a federation of Manet's sort of new topic. There are some near future issues. The OLSR v2 router restart recommendations were prompted by a problem that was found last year during a major interoperability testing event. Yeah, I will get in touch with Henning Rogge to because it was with his implementation OLSR D2 that we ran into this. I will ask him if he has worked on a solution in the meantime. There was also 1 year ago at the March meeting a presentation jointly by Rick Taylor and Lou Berger on a DLAB clarifications and lessons learned internet draft that they both thought would be useful to have. However, since they have indicated that neither of them has time to work on it, Lou, can you confirm that it's still the case?
I may have time once the other drafts get submitted to the ISG.
Okay. Yeah, I understand.
Yeah, I'm not going to, yeah.
Yeah, sure.
I'll revisit that once they're submitted. Thank you.
Yeah, I can see your point. Just for good measure, I will ask Rick the same question. Then question to Alvaro, but not on his capacity as AD, but as someone who's maybe involved in this inter-satellite link thing. Do you think there's any role for the Manet working group with regard to that?
Alvaro Rotana, Future Way Technologies. Yes, I'm authoring a couple of drafts on routing over ISL. We presented them at a couple of different working groups, and we are, my company, working with a specific provider who has or is who has deployed their own constellation, etc. Now, the thing that some people have asked us here at the IETF is, well, if we're going to standardize something, we need interoperability. And it would be great if we had other participants, wanting to do this. So yes, on one hand, I think that things are moving. It's an ad hoc type network, so it sort of fits. On the other hand, I would really like to see other people in the space interested, right? If not, I don't think it makes sense for the one person or the one company to push some work, right? Even if others might want to help, right? So I would rather see that interest first before having something, listen here.
Clear. I let. Oh yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, Dejan Bogdanovic. So I believe you're referring to the presentation that was done this morning in the distributed mobility. Yeah, and I want to make that comment there. So first of all, if that would be discussed, I think Manet would be a much better working group for that than in the distributed mobility management. And as this is about semantic routing, and there is some interest within the community to work on the semantic routing. By this, I'm referring to the work by Adrian Farrell and Daniel King. It might be worth to see what they are doing on general semantic routing, and then you can add the use cases for the inter-satellite links, because you just want to add some semantics to the routing.
Thank you.
Right, so just a quick clarification, Alvaro Rotana, Future Way, again. Yes, so there are, this is a big system, right? So there are many different parts in there, and that's why we've been talking to different working groups. So there's all the mobility and handoff management stuff, so that's why DMM. There's a bunch of routing, right, in between all the links. There's how do we actually do some of the directions through the network, which is where we're looking at putting some semantics in the addresses, so that it's not just go to address 5, but inside the orbit, go left or right in the orbit, go, et cetera. I think that given that it's a big problem, it probably doesn't fit in one place.
Yeah.
And even if we do one thing in one place, for example, routing here, right? I think the forwarding using, say, semantic addresses, it's sort of independent somehow, right? We can still do forwarding in different ways, or we can do them with the semantic thing, right? So in other words, I don't want to also wait for other working groups and research groups to figure out what to do with the semantic routing stuff before doing something. If there's enough interest to do it, at least there's some interest, or I guess there's some interest. So it would be important to see what else and how would we scope that work, say
Yes.
here,
Yeah.
or somewhere else. Right?
Yeah. Dejan Bogdanovic. So as the semantic routing is looking for some real use cases, and they're coming up with this is a real use case and a real problem that industry has to solve, is trying to solve. So there's the reason why I'm saying joining forces by bringing a real use case that is a problem today could speed up the work, because there would be more interest by the larger number of community.
Okay. Lou.
So I think we've had satellite presentations in multiple working groups in different areas. Speaking to Alvaro as AD, it might be worthwhile to have a single place, at least for the routing issues, to be um, housed, so that we know where to go for the discussions, and they're single discussions as opposed to fragmented discussion. And whether semantic routing elements show up or not, I think that's a more detailed comment than what I'm making. That's secondary. But it would be a good to have a single place for it. Manet seems to be a great candidate. Not a lot of activity here so there's probably space for it. But then again, you often get more activity in a new working group. So I would be interested in hearing from Alvaro if the ISG has been talking about potentially where to house this activity.
Hi again, Alvaro Rotana, Routing AD. No, we haven't specifically been talking about this work on routing and satellites. We have, well, me obviously, but others noticed that there have been presentations, different places. So just to be clear, I'm going to hand this off to one of the other routing ADs, right, since I have an obvious conflict, on talking especially with the int ADs, because of DMM, and it has been presented, I think, in int area as well, to figure out, what do we do with this, if anything. As I said before, one of my concerns, even if I'm one of the authors there, is that I think it's an interesting topic, and I think many of us would say it's an interesting topic even if we were not working on it. I would, again, like to see more actual people working on constellations or trying to provide service over satellite networks to come forward and be interested in doing some of the work. Otherwise, it won't be as fruitful or as impactful work for the IETF in the end. But yes, I'll carry this to John or Andrew to talk about whether they think there is enough interest and to figure out what to do with this at some point. There will also be a short presentation on this in the next slot in RTGWG. So I'll also talk to the chairs there, because RTGWG is chartered to try and dispatch some things so that they try and think about that as well.
Thank you. I have to say that I am on the int area mailing list, and I see all these posts on semantic routing fly by, but I haven't really had time to digest all that. But
oh, so sorry. So now that you said that, it reminded me of something else. So as I tried to say before, this routing over satellites, right, is trying to use some semantic addressing to do the forwarding. But it is not just semantic addressing, right, and we don't depend on that. There has been, to answer another part of Lou's question, a little bit more discussion in the IESG, and I'm sure you guys have seen it in the IRTF as well, especially in the Pointer G working research group, about semantic routing in general. So yes, we have talked a little bit more about that, because the general response from the IRTF seems to be more along the lines of this may be engineering work, not a research topic. And of course, in the IETF, we still haven't seen specific proposals for use cases. Maybe this is the first one, right? Again, trying to deconflict myself as much as possible. So we've been looking at that as well. If there is a specific proposal for what work should we do, then it's something we can consider. Do we charter a new working group? Do we do this? Do we do a mailing list? Whatever the options are. Again, if you're interested, towards the end of RTGWG in the next hour, we're going to have a discussion on that. Hopefully we get to it, because it's in the last couple of 10, 20 minutes. So we might run out of time, but that's some of what we're going to be discussing there as well.
Ian.
So on the semantic routing, there are issues for use cases, but the more and more I start to look into the edge applications. I hate that word, but it's sort of like a marketing word that covers a lot of area. I see there's a lot of need for semantic routing in industrial process applications that are being executed at the edge. So having more use cases, we can then have a better foundation for the semantic routing where we can take multiple aspects, what are the requirements, and develop the right solution instead of just going from one angle and ended up in one specialized, and then we see, oh, we need something else, and then we end up with another version of solution for pretty much the same problem. Hence, I would like to see that, me personally, I would like to see that joint work, because who knows what different areas will run into it, and the more input we have, I think we can then develop a better solution.
Makes sense. Lou, are you still in the queue, or did you want to add something? Ah, that's clear. Right. So we have a couple of minutes left. So I would like to say, and now for something completely different. This is about protocols that were developed in this working group in the past. Notably, simplified multicast forwarding, which is a way to disseminate multicast information in an efficient manner throughout a Manet, or a federation of Manets, probably. And there are several ways. This is described in RFC 6621, by the way, which is an experimental document from 2012. Never brought further to standards track. However, I know that the original authors from the Naval Research Laboratory in the US have been doing a lot of work since. And hopefully we can one day persuade them to bring some of that work here. But in the meantime, we have SMF, and it has a number of what are called relay set reduction mechanisms. Those are 3 of them are described in appendices to RFC 6621. One of them is called source-based multipoint relay, and this is the one that can use information from a unicast routing protocol, optimized link state routing v2, described in RFC 7181, to effectively use the graph that protocol uses to disseminate its topology control information. Leverage that to also use general user type, multicast packets. However, when it comes to implementations, there is an implementation out there for OLSR v2, which is called OLSR D2. It's done by Henning Rogge. And there is NRL SMF from the Naval Research Lab. OLSR D2 has the information that NRL SMF needs to do this SMPR mechanism. However, in an incompatible format. So a little thingy that I worked on, and it's really very simple, is write a sort of conversion program that ties the two together. I want to open source this. I don't know how many hurdles there are in my organization, but if I explain how it works, then it's so simple that you can always do it yourself in a couple of hours. Well, maybe this is a bit small, but basically says what I just said here. OLSR v2 selects multi-point relays based on neighbor information that it gets in such a way that it covers all its 2-hop neighbors. SMF can leverage this information for the SNPR mechanism. And if we go to implementations, there's this OLSR D2 and there's NRL SMF, and what we need is a bit of glue to tie them together, which is what this is. OLSR D2 has a telnet interface. You can talk to it over TCP socket via the loopback interface. NRL SMF on the other end has a Unix socket where it expects its input. Both send their regular information. So in the case of OLSR D2, these are the OLSR v2 routing packets containing hellos and TC messages. And in the case of NRL SMF, this is the actual user traffic. That doesn't even have to be UDP, of course. Yeah, that's not. Forget the UDP socket thing on the right side. That was my mistake. But the thing in the middle is called DAF, and because OLSR D2 is from Germany and NRO SMF is from the USA, DAF stands for Deutsche-Amerikanische Freundschaft, or German-American Friendship, which also happens to be the name of a German band from the 1980s. This DAF thing is continually querying OLSR D2 for neighbor information, specifically who are your symmetric neighbors, one-hop neighbors, and which of those have selected you as an NPR. So who are your NPR selectors? And this is exactly the information that NRL SMF needs. And so, but the formats are a bit different. So DAF converts the answers that it gets from OLSR D2 and sends them in a format that NRL SMF can digest to NRL SMF. And while it's doing that, it's also logging all the information that it gets from OLSR D2. So afterwards, you have a nice trace over the whole run, over the whole period of your, let's say, experiment or test, of which nodes were one-hop neighbors and NPR selectors at which point in time. And there's a little snippet here from a window that shows the source MAC address of neighbor, whether or not it's an NPR selector of yours, and whether or not the neighbor status is symmetric. And that's really all. And we're almost out of time. So thank you for attending, whether in person or remotely. We have to see whether we will have a meeting in Philadelphia, but I hope we do. And see you there, if not before, on the mailing list. And don't forget to state your opinion on the adoption of the drafts of Henning-Rogan if you haven't done so yet. Thanks. Don, any final words from you?
No, I think we're good. Oh, I did the one thing I did. We have that open errata, and I put a message on the mailing list to try to address that, to try and close it down.
Yeah, my bad that I skipped over that. I wanted to address that right after the document status, but I forgot. Really, sorry about that.
Sounds like
So with that, meeting adjourned. Thank you.
thank you.